Lisa and Christopher Biggins here to go through the papers this morning, and we're talking about a lady called Fleur Britton. And could an anger workshop help with her midlife rage?
I don't know. I'm going to throw this question over to Isabel Webster. This is Isabel, sorry. Now, this is a story in the Times today. It's a journalist called Fleur Britton, as you pointed out, who has tried basically a workshop where you go and stand in a room for 40 quid, cheap at half the price, not, and scream. And it's meant to cure mum rage, evidently.
Oh, OK.
If you remember, back in the 70s, there was primal therapy was big in California, wasn't it, where you went and stood somewhere and screamed, which was meant to release all your inner childhood traumas or something or other. It was debunked, there was no science behind it. That doesn't actually seem to matter with this particular workshop. Look, if it works, it works, but it's aimed at millennial women who are having trouble coping with their children and husbands.
You know what? It's easy to laugh about it, but I do think there's a lot of women really overwhelmed trying to juggle.
Why is it always women? The men are overwhelmed as well. I'm just going to ask you when did you last scream?
Oh, yesterday, probably.
Yeah, I screamed yesterday.
You screamed? I never scream. I
screamed yesterday. Yeah, I scream through frustration when I physically can't do something or I drop something or whatever.
That's different. Biggins, when were you last screaming? Be careful.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I never scream.
No, I would agree with that, my friend.
Yeah,
and I think if you did raise your voice or scream, I would take it very seriously.
Yeah, I think you've got to be wary, because once I do go, I go. But very rarely do I go, because it's, you know, life is too short.
Sweet. Yeah. Well, I do know a lot of very overwhelmed women, believe it or not. And most of those women have the mental sort of chores, as well as a lot of the domestic chores, as well as holding down a job. And I say this with a lot of these women have very supportive husbands, very involved in childrearing, unlike the previous generation. But still, most of that mental load is with the women. They're doing the emails in the middle of the night to the school to say, my child's sick, I can't come to school.
Sorry, did you just say they're involved in what, unlike the previous generation?
Helping with the childrearing.
Women?
No, men. Men today now are more involved than the previous my father's generation, for example. So you can't say it's all on women's shoulders, but I still think, and all the studies show, something like 70 to 80% of it still falls on women's shoulders. So I think there is a serious story in this.
There is a serious story. I'm taking the mickey slightly, but I mean, it's obviously aimed at mums of a certain wealth level, because, you know...
So did screaming help her?
She, you know what? She never actually says whether it did or not.
I personally probably would suggest it doesn't help. I think meditation and, like, calming techniques rather than venting.
Right, Biggins, we go to the theatre. I could scream when I hear this. This is at the Leeds Playhouse. My Fair Lady is on there. What should I be worried about?
Well, you should be worried about because, of course, as we all know, it's a wonderful musical, and it's about lampooning the class system, which is very, very cleverly done in the play. And
did you ever meet Rex Harrison?
I did, and he was quite something.
I hear that.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, but it was brilliant. I mean, he did this Henry Higgins absolutely superbly in both the stage show and
Where does it rain? In Spain.
But now what's happening is in Leeds, they're doing a production, and they've decided to make it clear that there are depictions of high society and classism in case it might upset the audience. Now, this is such a joke. I mean, I couldn't agree more with this. Earlier this month, Ralph Fiennes called for such warnings to be axed. I mean, it is ludicrous.
But what's the scenario? So someone's in the theatre and someone's depicted with a Cockney accent and they get offended by that.
That's the idea. And also the fact that it's...
the posh look down on them.
Exactly. Then the posh come in and I mean, that's the whole thing of
the joke's on the posh at the end of it all.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, but we must make our own minds up. We can't be told.
So is it the working class that are meant to be offended by this? I mean, you know, as a Cockney...
Maybe if you're posh, you should be offended by it.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah. Who's meant to be offended? Who's going to, you know, get upset?
There's a very funny line, though, headline here, wouldn't it be wokery, which I think is very funny.
Wouldn't it be wokery? Now, Keir Starmer yesterday, I must admit, honestly, goodness, I don't vote for any of them. I say this all the time. But he just, I mean, 1 minute he's for this, then he's for that, then he's... So he's trying to make out that he was always for a fully fledged, complete ceasefire or I can't remember what he was in. What is he?
It was
Humanitarian pause.
Humanitarian pause was the phrase. But as the lovely West Streeting pointed out, this is an evolution of language, right? OK, remember to use that phrase at home. So Keir Starmer was at the Scottish Labour conference in Glasgow, and the day before he gave this speech, they had voted for a ceasefire.
Correct, as had the SNP.
As had the SNP, right?
So he's out of Scotland. He's out of kilter with Scotland if he doesn't vote the same.
Exactly. So he comes out in his speech and says the fighting must stop now, which is kind of like a ceasefire. And it was like the day after.
But he got a standing ovation for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, but what does he mean? I'm confused, like you, when you're talking to us. What does it actually mean?
Well, it means he'll do anything to be elected.
Is it a ceasefire?
Yeah. I mean, people like Jess Phillips quitting the shadow cabinet because she wanted a ceasefire and they just weren't moving on it. And, you know, it'd be very interesting to see how this plays out in Westminster with the vote this week.
Well, that's...
Because, you know, obviously Scotland, for the first time, Labour have a chance up there.
Yeah.
So they obviously need to think about that if they want to try and get the keys to Downing Street. Scotland is absolutely fundamental to them.
It just, you know, and the fact that, you know, Keir Starmer has sat on the fence constantly on this issue, and then suddenly the day after they vote, it's, ceasefire.
Make your own minds up, folks. Thanks very much indeed, Dawn and Christopher. Here's your weather.